Hey y'all, how's it going? So we're gonna dissect this Steve Jordan sound today from this tune called "Busted." It's a Ray Charles tune actually, and it's on a John Scofield tribute record to Ray Charles, and I believe it's called "That's What I Say." Um, it's a really cool tune, really interesting groove. I dissected the beat in a different lesson, so we're just gonna check out the sound here. All right, you get the idea. Pretty cool groove, things like that. Let's start with this kick drum, and or actually, I'm going to remove these tracks that I didn't use so there's no confusion. Not remove, but switch around. All right, so we're basically talking about stereo room, mono overhead, kick out, snare top, and hi hat, which is kind of in there. All right, so let's start with the kick drum. I messed around with a couple different ways to get this sound. I believe what he used is a really kind of funky 16-inch bass drum that he has, which has two heads on it. I tried it with an 18-inch bass drum with a single head and just tried to crank the drum fairly high. A little bit of dampening on it, a felt strip, so it's not crazy out of control, but so there has some control to it, and try to capture some of the ring to the sound. Okay, you get the idea. So you hear the ring of the drum itself, and I did a few things with EQ and compression here. Let's check it out without these. Okay, so I wanted to get some of this kind of funky mid-rangey thing that's happening if you check out the real track. And so what I did is I went down to about, wow, it's higher than I thought, 1K, and I boosted the heck out of that. And then I took off some of the high end, above 6K here, above, yeah, essentially 7.5. Okay, so here's with the EQ. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of this kind of attack. There's a soft beater. There is attack coming off the drum itself, but it doesn't sound like it's from the beater. It's just naturally how it was hit, if that makes any sense. Definitely soft beater. A medium felt did not sound correct at all. Next, I wanted to try to get some of this length from the head itself. So I'm hitting the input fairly hard on this distressor here. The attack is at about 6.5, so we're cutting some of that transient, but then the release is very long, so we're hanging on to that tone of the drum. I'll start with it off and then turn it on. Significant difference with that on, right? All of a sudden we go from kind of boom, boom, to boom, boom, ba-dum, okay? Which is what's it's kind of this kind of helps to the rolling feel of the whole thing, I think. Ba-doom, ba-doom, kind of legato. Okay, I'll get to the snare last. Okay, rooms. There's a significant amount of room here. Kind of my standard Coles 4038s on the rooms, just like. Okay. Next, mono overhead. AKG 414 in a figure 8 pattern. Cheated a little bit toward the ride cymbal because the ride cymbal is predominant in the original song mix. In the snare, I wanted to be able to control that a little more through the individual mic, and not have it so much directly going into the overhead. So it's a bit over toward the ride cymbal, and it sounds like this. Okay, so you can hear ride cymbal is the highest thing in the mix of that single mic. All right, so the mic placement is important in this, because if you put it directly more over the snare, you're going to have less control with your individual snare microphone. Snare. I tried a few different snares. I couldn't exactly match this snare sound. Really, what it's coming from is the actual drum that Steve Jordan has. I don't know exactly what it is. I tried tuning as much as I could, and I tried a bunch of different drums. I ended up with my Ludwig 3x13, which is originally what I thought it would be, but it's still not quite right. It doesn't have the spank that his particular drum has. Let me give you some examples of some other drums I tried, okay? This first one is my brass piccolo, Ludwig brass piccolo, 4x14. Okay, so that one has the honk that his drum seems to have, but it doesn't have the body. All right. Next is my Ludwig Pioneer, which is a 5x14, and I cranked the heck out of that thing. I thought, well, maybe it's a little more standard drum with a wood shell to it. Again, sounds super cool, not quite right. Check this out. Okay, again, super cool, kind of has the honk that it needs, but it doesn't have the body. That's a really kind of open sounding drum. All right, next I tried my Rogers. I have no idea what it is, but it's a 6.5 deep drum. I really cranked this thing. I love how it sounds. Again, not quite it. Sounds cool, but not quite it. Here. Again, cool, but the closest match was the Ludwig 3x13. Okay, comes from a Gold Coast kit. So this is what we have. So what I did is I used the individual mic. Originally, I thought it was maybe just overhead, but there's definitely some individual mic blended in, and to get some of this. You know, the interesting thing about the drum in the recording is it's got some body, it's got some honk to it, but it also doesn't last too long. It's got a snap to it. Part of it could be in the playing, the way he hits the drum. No doubt there's some of that in there. But this is what I did to my drum just to get it a little closer to what I thought. Okay, so and I did put some hi-hat mic in there. I think it's debatable, but it seemed to help the presence of the hi-hat mic. And next, it was really just figure out the kind of layers of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mics, or 6 mics. Okay, it's really just all about balance. That ride cymbal seems to sit on top. The snare is predominant. The kick drum sits in the room a bit. Let me show you what I tried to do with this inside kick mic. I used my D12 and I actually put it in very close to the head. Not to get so much attack, but to try to work on that length. Eventually, I decided that I could just do this with one mic, which is why I added the compression and things. But I kind of liked this idea, and I do like the sound of it. So here's just the inside kick, the D12. Okay, I really like that. It's a little too present for what we were going for here, but blended with I'll blend it here a little with the outside kick mic so you can check it out. Okay, so that's a pretty nice blend of those two things together. That's out. Stereo overheads. Didn't seem like a stereo track. There are tom mics. Let's add these in just for kicks and where there's this little fill here, and see how these tom mics fit in. I'm going to bring these down a little. See if these do anything. Here it is without the tom mics. Yeah, so they can help a little if they're in there a bit, but you don't want them too present. Okay, and last but not least, these toms tuned fairly high, really jazzy, but I dampened them a bit as if there were kind of some super old heads on them. I didn't want them resonating through the whole room, just to have some control on them. I'm not particularly a fan. I don't play with really high-tuned rack toms too much, but I do like the idea of it. The touch feels very nice when it's tuned super high, but not as ringy, at least for me. And that's basically it. Go check out this track if you don't know it. It's really great. I love the concept of this sound, especially with this groove. Yeah, it's really interesting. All right, Steve Jordan, Busted, the John Scofield record. That's what I say. Dig it. See you soon.